Hi, I'm Amber. Welcome back to Cats Reads, and today I'm going to share with you my wrap-up for the month of March and my TBR for the month of April. This past month I was able to read 5 books and I DNF'd one other, and let's talk about that. First, I will talk about the book that DNF'd, which is Night Film by Marisha Pessl. This is about a veteran investigative journalist, Scott McGrath, whose career has gone south after an article that he published which had huge backlash with a witness that didn't come through for him. And now he has caught on to a story about a young woman who supposedly committed suicide, and this girl connects back to the story that created his career to go bust, and he thinks that there's more to it, and he's hoping that the person that he was investigating will be connected and he can get him back for what happened to his career. I think I would have liked it better if it weren't for these inserts where people assume that this is new and it's different and it's gonna add something. What I don't think that I saw going into it is that it's gonna be an info dump basically, and she was trying to hide the fact that she's info dumping by using these new and different ways of telling the story. Because the very first thing that I had to do was read through 18 pages worth of this stuff, and it definitely felt like info dumping and unnecessary, and it just made the story feel very draggish, and I just didn't really appreciate the feeling that I had to get through those in order to understand what was going to be said later on, and it just totally made me feel like it was info dumping, and I didn't appreciate that, like I said, and so I just couldn't take that, and I didn't have patience for it. I know a lot of people like this book a lot because of those inserts, and maybe I'm missing something, but if you're really reading those inserts, you're gonna realize how much of an info dump it is. She's not integrating the information throughout the story, she's just placing them there, and you have to get through it, or else, I don't know, you're just not gonna be able to see a lot of the clues that are being handed through those things. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe if I had been just patient enough, I would have realized that I didn't really need to read all of them, that it wasn't going to add anything, or I wasn't going to miss something, but I just couldn't deal. I have other books I wanted to read that were going to end up being a lot better than this, so I DNF'd it, and I probably won't try to read this again, unless someone can really convince me as to why I should. Then I picked up I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. This is her first memoir, and it deals with her early childhood when she ends up living with her grandmother, and then for some reason she ends up going back to living with her mother several years later, and the incident that changed her life when she does. She really writes beautifully, which definitely kept me into this book all the way through. I think that if it hadn't been for how beautifully she wrote it and for the first half of the book, I probably would have given up on it quite quickly. Although, like I said, the first half definitely had me hooked. It felt like there was a real full-fleshed story there. The last half of the book felt very rushed, definitely felt like a setup to the next memoir that she came out with, and it really just took away the enjoyment that I had been experiencing from the first half. What really made this book a 4-star rating for me is that Angela was able to pull me into her memories and made me able to feel for her and really understand and see her as a child and what her life was. It is a beautifully written memoir with a very great beginning but a lackluster ending, and I think that if I do end up reading the rest of the memoirs, it'll give me a much more fuller picture, and maybe I will feel less down on that second half. But it definitely was a setup, especially because it's a memoir of her childhood, and I wish she had made it feel on the whole like one story and then moved on in the next book. It didn't really feel like she needed to make it into that series feeling, and even in series you really shouldn't make the first book as a setup for the second book and so on. I just feel like each book needs to have its own conflict and crisis, and that moment where it reaches some kind of resolution even as it leads you into the next book, and it wasn't there with this. So I did give it 4 stars because I really enjoyed her writing and the story for most part, and she really does know how to pull the reader in. On a side note, before I move on to the next book, is that I wish that she had really focused in more on the side effects of what happened to her when she moved back with her mother. It's just that she talks about it, and she does kind of go through it, but I don't feel like there was enough, and maybe if I do read her other memoirs, she'll go into it even more, but she kind of leaves you hanging a little bit there, and I wanted to understand more about how she felt and how she dealt with what happened to her, and that was just kind of something that I felt she didn't handle well also. Then we have The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This is about a middle-aged man who returns to his hometown for a funeral and ends up facing his past. Now, going into this book, I did not expect horror, but that is what I got. I knew that it was going to be more on the fantasy side, and I was definitely looking forward to that. But getting horror really took me for a shock, and I did appreciate it because I thought I knew what I was getting into, because I have watched reviews, I read reviews, and I didn't see anywhere where it said horror. Nobody said that this was horror, and it definitely added and amplified to the shock that I had with certain scenes, especially the worm scene, which still gives me the heebie-jeebies every time I think about it. That being said, I really did not like this book. It's not a book for me. I think that maybe if I had gone into it knowing what I was getting into, I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But it was right on the edge of being too long, which added to my not liking it, because I feel like this is supposed to be a short story. Everybody has said that it's meant to be a short story, and it's right on the edge of stepping over the line of what's considered a short story, at least what I loosely think of is meant to be a short story in a sense of length. So I just kind of felt like the story dragged. It was a little bit slow, took a little bit too long for things to happen. And I also really didn't appreciate the fact that the adult part of the story bookended the child's story, and I just wanted there to be a little bit more back and forth. And I feel like if there had been, it would have added a little bit more to the story. It would have probably helped me in being kept interested in the child story, because maybe the adult person would have been able to add to the child person's perspective and viewpoints and answer a lot of questions that weren't getting answered in a timely fashion for me. The one thing that definitely intrigues me is the fact that he never gives you the child/adult name. You never know who he really is in that sense. And I will say this for Neil Gaiman, he knows how to write. He definitely gave you, like I said, the heebie-jeebies with the worm scene, and he just knows how to curate the world and the story, and the 7-year-old voice was superb. But I just couldn't take the story, and it was a little bit too long and a little bit too slow for anything to happen. So in the end, I did give it 3 stars, but I do feel like it's more like a 2-star. I think I was just being generous because of his writing. So that being said, that was my review for The Ocean at the End of the Lane. I think I will definitely be picking up American Gods because I definitely did like his writing. Dewey, the Small Town Library Cat Who Touched the World by Vicky Martin with Brett Witters. This is about, of course, Dewey, who was thrown into the library's return slot overnight, and how his rescue and how the rescue and becoming part of the library helped Vicky, who was, or is rather, the library director, and also the town, and also the townspeople who were going through a lot of emotional and economical issues. I really loved the moments where she was talking directly about Dewey, and we got Dewey stories which were so cute and funny and heartwarming, but she took a lot of time to delve into the town, which came off very cheesy. I think she was too determined to make the town seem this great, fantastic place, while underneath it all you could see the issues that were there. But she would say or hint at it, but never outrightly talk about those issues. And then she would cover up and be like, well, there was this and that, but look at how Dewey did this for this person or that for that person. And she was trying to hide the fact that there was animosity towards people, towards each other, and there was a lot of issues with people, and you never really feel like these issues are ever resolved because, you know, Dewey distracted them from those issues. That's basically what she's saying. Like, oh, you know, this person and that person didn't like each other, but Dewey brought them together. But the reality is that they were distracted by Dewey. They never really resolved issues, and I didn't really appreciate the fact that she made it out like it was okay to hide from the problems instead of facing them onward and actually dealing with those issues and hopefully finding a way to come together to face the problems of what the library was facing and things like that. I get that Dewey helped people kind of feel better in the moment and to just help them not to be so focused on what was happening in their lives that it weighed them down to the point of hopelessness. And I get that, but she tried so hard to make it out like Dewey was some superhero cat that it really didn't work because there was these issues and you never felt like they were being resolved, as I said. So I was really disappointed in this book because I really just wanted Dewey and I didn't get Dewey all that much or as much as I wanted. I just wanted Dewey stories. This could have been much shorter and just focused in on Dewey, and that would have been fine. I went in knowing there's going to be cheese and I didn't get that. So overall I gave this 2 stars. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Everybody knows what this is about, so I'm not even going to talk about what the synopsis is. I will say is I wasn't really going into this expecting a lot from his writing. I expected it to be dry and bland and a bit boring, but Charles Dickens has humor. Like, there's this humor side to the way he says things, and I loved it. I loved his writing. I love the way he told the story. I do like he does run on in his sentences a lot. Like, he likes to describe things to the tiniest detail, which is probably why his books are so massive. But I was able to look beyond that because I definitely enjoyed the way he told the story, and I was just really liked it. It did kind of get on the cheesy side, but come on, it is a Christmas story and it's meant to be cheesy. Christmas is the cheesiest holiday ever, I feel, so it worked. And overall, I think that the film that we watch each year does a superb job in keeping true to this book, and I was really surprised at how close it was to the book, but there was some definite changes that the film did, but I actually understand why they had to do those changes. But either way, I'm glad that I finally read this, and this is a book that I will definitely pick up again during the Christmas holidays. And of course, I gave this 4 stars. The last book that I have to talk about is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the Farseer trilogy, and it's about Fitz, who is the bastard son of Prince Chivalry, and he ends up living inside the keep, and King Shrewd decides to take him in and have him secretly trained as a assassin. I get that this is the first book in this trilogy, and I understand that, but I feel like this book is definitely a setup. You can feel it all the way through, and not a lot happens throughout the book. It starts happening in the last third of the book, and there's this moment where she actually had him going somewhere, and I thought, oh, we're finally we're gonna get into some excitement, and then she pulls back, and then we go into another segment of nothing happening, and then finally something really does happen, and that's like the end of the book. And that was really frustrating to me because the whole book should have had some story, something really happening throughout the book, but instead I felt like the first half of the book was just explanation of the magic and just a world building and getting to know the characters, which that was fine in a way. I love her world building and I loved getting to know the characters, and she really knew how to do that very well. Her writing is superb and I loved her writing, but I felt like she definitely gets heavy-handed in one side and doesn't know how to balance it on both sides of getting an actual story going and the world building, which could have been very well balanced out throughout. So I would have loved it to be a little bit more balanced out. I did enjoy it for the most part, but I started to get impatient once we hit the halfway mark and things weren't really happening. I don't know if I'll buy the second book first off. I'll probably borrow it and then read it. Like, I think I definitely will borrow it, but I won't buy it until I've read the second book and have decided if it's getting any better. So I gave it 3 stars. I'm not sure, like I said, if I'm going to pick up it anytime soon. Now on to the TBR for the month of April. The first book that I have, and which I am currently reading right now, is The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. This is about, of course, Moonstone, a priceless Indian diamond which has come to Indian as spoils of war and is given to Rachel Friender on the eve of her birthday, and that very night that she's given it, it's also stolen. So about who did it, why did they take it, and what did those three mysterious Indian jugglers have to do with this diamond and the thievery of it. So far, I'm really enjoying it. It's definitely slow going, but I'm enjoying the writing and I'm very intrigued to see where it goes. But I will say, but like I said, it is slow going in the sense that the author tends to drag certain things out a little bit. Although he mentions like, yeah, I'm dragging this out, please forgive me. He goes on that kind of thing, so I'm okay with that. But I am having some qualms about the way he talks about women. Like, I don't really know if what he's saying is something that I should have issues with. It's just kind of something that bothers me a little bit, but we'll see what I think with some research and more reading of the book. Then next I will be reading The Third Life of Grange Copeland by Alice Walker. I've read The Color Purple and I really enjoyed it, so I've been wanting to read more of her works, and this is actually her debut novel, so I'm definitely looking forward to reading. This is about Grange Copeland, of course, who is a black tenant farmer in Georgia. He can't stand how he's being treated by the white landowners, and so he decides to run away to the north, leaving behind a wife and son. Years later, he returns to find his son on trial for the murder of his wife, and Grange takes in his son's daughter. Handled with Care by Jodi Picoult. This is about Charlotte and Sean O'Keefe. There's a young girl named Willow who was born with an illness, and I'm not sure what it is because the synopsis does not tell you. But when the story begins, she's 5 years old, and she's a very lovable child, very smart, but after a series of events, Charlotte and her husband are forced to confront the most serious what-ifs of all. What if Charlotte had known earlier about Willow's illness? What if things could have been different? What if their beloved Willow had never been born? And to do dual justice, Charlotte must ask herself these questions and one more. What constitutes a valuable life? I'm very excited to read this. I love Jodi Picoult, and for the most part I have enjoyed her books. There have been a few here and there that I've not liked, so I'm not really going into this expecting a lot because this is one of her earlier works, I believe, so it's definitely the earlier works that I have had issues with the most. Either way, definitely looking forward to this because the story sounds really interesting. Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. This will be the last time that I pick this up. So this is about Claire, who in 1945 is a former combat nurse, and she's back from the war with her husband in Scotland, trying to get to know each other again after years of being separated because of the war. And Scotland, I think, was their honeymoon, I believe, and they decided to go back. But she ends up traveling back in time to 1743, a Scotland that is being torn up by war, and it's all about how she tries to survive throughout. Now, I remember reading this when I was just first starting out in college, and I remember really liking it then, but then I tried to read it last year, I believe, and I wasn't really caring for it. But I am so determined to at least try it once more because I feel like this is a book and series that I will enjoy. I just wasn't sure if it was because of the mood I was in when I tried to read it last year or not. But this will definitely be the last time because I just can't keep these books on my shelves any longer unless I am definitely going to be reading all of them. The fifth and last book that I have for my TBR is Moby Dick by Herman Melville. I do not expect me to get through this book this month at all. This is a massive book, and we all know what Moby Dick is about, and we all kind of have the idea of what Herman Melville's writing style is, either because you've already read it yourself or you've read snippets through high school, which is how I was introduced to Herman Melville myself. And I don't think I liked it at all, but it's a book that I've been wanting to read ever since I started college. And I think that hopefully I'll enjoy it now, or at least be able to get through it. It will be a book that I will feel very accomplished if I do finish. That is it for me. Tell me down below if you've read any of the books that I talked about today. Let's have a discussion about them below. Thank you all so much for watching, and keep smiling.